March 7th, 2019 meeting of the Peoria Planning and Zoning Commission meeting will now come to order. I'd like to welcome everyone attending tonight's Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Nice to see a big turnout. We're going to begin with a roll call tonight. Vice Chairman Jay Otluski, absent. Secretary Brian Patterson.
Present.
Commissioner Sean Hutchinson.
Present.
Commissioner Linda Grice.
Present.
Commissioner Clay Alsop. Absent. Commissioner Joanna Condi. Here. Welcome. Alternate member Danette Dunn.
Present.
All right, Chairman Jeff Nelson am present. I'd like to read an opening statement that we begin all meetings with. The commission is composed of Peoria citizens who have been appointed by the City Council to serve on the commission as a civic responsibility without compensation. Our duty is to study and review planning and zoning issues within the City of Peoria. The commission hears zoning cases, holds public hearings, or may conduct a study session on a topic. Decisions made by the commission are forwarded as written recommendations to the City Council, who take final action. All hearings are conducted in accordance with the rules for procedures and Robert's Rules of Order. Each case will be called in the order in which it appears on the agenda unless otherwise announced during the meeting. In the interest of maintaining a fair and efficient hearing, the commission adheres to the following steps. Chair will open the case. City staff will then provide a brief report and recommendation. The applicant is then invited to give a presentation. Then any member of the public may provide testimony. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes. When we call your name, please come up to the podium and provide your name and address for the record. After all the testimony has been taken, we'll invite the applicant back up to provide any rebuttal or final statements. The commission will then discuss the case and make its decision. Anyone wishing to speak must complete a speaker's request form and hand it to the commission assistant on my left. When providing testimony, we ask that you please be as brief as possible and avoid repeating statements already made by others. Any member of the public may appeal to the City Council the decision of the commission regarding a conditional use permit. The appeal must be submitted in writing to the Planning and Community Development Department within 15 calendar days of the date of the commission's decision. All commission recommendations on public hearing items, including general plan amendments, rezones, zoning code amendments, and special plans, move forward to a regular City Council meeting. The City Council will then act on the recommendation of the commission. The City Council may concur with the decision, modify it, overturn it, or remand it back to the commission for further consideration. We welcome citizens' comments, and as fellow citizens of Peoria, we thank you in advance for your participation. The final call to submit speaker request forms. If anyone wishes to speak, please fill out a speaker request form and provide it to Ms. Ernest, seated at the end of the dais. Our first item up tonight is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is for items that are routine in nature or have been previously reviewed by the commission and will be enacted by one motion. Tonight's consent agenda consists of 2 items. Item 1C, discussion and possible action to excuse the absences of Secretary Brian Patterson and Commissioner Danette Dunn from the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting held on February 21st, 2019. Item 2C, discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting held on February 21st, 2019. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments about any of the consent agenda items tonight? Seeing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Move we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve tonight's consent agenda. Commissioners, please vote. And the consent agenda passes unanimously. Thank you, Commissioners. We'll now move on to our regular agenda. We have 3 items before us tonight. Item 3R is Columbia Square Drive-Through Coffee Shop. Conditional use permit CU18-09. This is a request for a conditional use permit to construct a new coffee shop with drive-through service on a vacant parcel within the Columbia Square Shopping Center. The site is located north of the northeast corner of 75th Avenue and Cactus Road. Will you be presenting tonight, Mr. Allen? Very good. Please present your report.
Mr. Chair, Commission, thank you. Good evening. This item is located east of the city offices on the northeast corner of 75th Avenue and Cactus Road in a commercial development called Columbia Square. The applicant is Arc One Associates, and they've identified a location in that commercial center. It's about 0.17 gross acres, where they would like to obtain a conditional use permit to operate a new coffee shop with a drive-through. Zooming into the site, we could see a little bit better. There's just one remaining commercial pad that they've identified where they'd like to locate this use. And so Columbia Square surrounds this site on the north, south, east, and west. The existing Columbia Square Commercial Center characterizes the area and was established back in 1986. North and east of the center is the Foxwood single-family residential community. To the south and southwest of Cactus Road, we have two additional commercial centers with comparable commercial uses, and then across 75th, directly west of the site, is Cactus Square Commercial Park, which is also comparable commercial development. To the northwest is Park Rose. It's also a single-family residential community, and that's where we have the closest of residential lots to this site, approximately 254 feet away, and I'll come back to that here in just a bit. Zooming into the retail pad, we could see that the proposed layout is represented in white. It also represents what would be the affected area within the center. The access and the parking to the site is all off-site, and so it's been granted permission by the owner to utilize both those features. The operation requires 13 parking stalls. All of those are adjacent to the retail pad. If you can see, those would be the white colored striped rows there that are adjacent to the square site. The proposal for the development is characterized by the double entry lanes near the southeast corner. You could see by those arrows that merge into one single lane that then exits in the northwest corner. The applicant proposes no menu boards or speakers for ordering. They're going to walk up to the cars or have the customers come to the order window. Having said that, though, there is a single lane that it is approximately 161 feet in length, and that was specifically designed so that one day, if the owner changed his mind and wanted to install a speaker box for ordering, or if the site transferred to a different owner or business, then that particular element could be an option in the future and still meet the zoning ordinance. And then finally, we have an outdoor patio just to the south of that proposed building that's colored in brown there. They've proposed to play some ambient music as well on that patio. The hours of operation are Monday through Saturday from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m., and then Sunday 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then the music is every day from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. With this particular operation, drive-throughs have specific criteria that they have to meet and that staff has to address, and those are listed in front of you. Drive-through lanes and all aspects of them must be at least 50 feet away from a residential zone property and use. The area that surrounds the drive-through has to have at least a 5-foot wide landscaped island to separate the drive-through from the other properties that are adjacent. Any drive-through canopies or appurtenances shall be architecturally compatible with the principal building. And then, of course, it has to go through this conditional use process to make sure that we vet out any impacts the site may have. Some additional limitations were introduced to the site, or basically are in effect with the site, with the proposal of ambient music. There's a noise standard value of no more than 70 between those hours there of 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. And they do meet that standard. Staff has found basically that the conditional use permit standards have been met of the zoning ordinance, and the special limitations that we just went over, criteria A through D, have been met. And we feel that it's going to operate in accordance with our recommended conditions of approval, and is not expected to disrupt its neighbors or any other nearby uses. And so staff recommends approval of case CU 18-09, subject to the conditions outlined in Exhibit 1. With that, I open it up for any questions.
Thank you for your report. Do any commissioners have any questions of staff on this item? None? Okay. I'm going to open the public hearing. Is the applicant present tonight? Do you wish to speak? No. Are you in agreement with the conditions and stipulations outlined in the staff report on this? Yes. Okay. Ms. Ernst, have you received any speaker request forms for this case? Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. Any further questions or comments from the commission before we take action on the conditional use permit for case CU 18-09? Thank you. Commissioner Condi.
Hi, I drove by the site. I think it's a really good use. I think it fits in with the neighborhood. There's not a coffee shop down there. I think it will benefit both the people in the neighborhood and also, I mean, it's just, right now it's just sitting there dirt, and I think it's a good use for the property and will benefit the neighborhood. So just wanted to make that statement.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions, commissioners? All right, seeing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move we approve case CU 18-09, subject to the conditions outlined in Exhibit 1 of the staff report.
Thank you. We have a motion on the table. Do I have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Commissioner. We have a motion and a second to approve a conditional use permit for case CU 18-09, subject to the conditions of approval in the staff report. Commissioners, would you please vote? And it passes unanimously. Thank you, Commissioners. All right, move on to our next item. Item 4R is the Trailhead Planned Area Development Zoning District. General Plan Amendment GPA 17-04 and Rezone Z17-27 and Alarovita, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, Rezone Z08-02A.3. This is a request to amend the City of Peoria General Plan and rezone approximately 24.8 acres. The proposed general plan amendment would modify the existing land use from estate density residential and low density residential to community commercial. The two proposed rezoning requests would rezone land from general agricultural, or AG designation, Suburban Ranch 43, SR 43 designation, and Alarovita PCD, Z08-02A.3, to the Trailhead Planned Area Development Zoning District. This site is located at the northeast corner of 83rd Avenue and Happy Valley Road. Staff is recommending that the Commission continue cases GPA 17-04, Z17-27, and Z08-02A.3. Mr. Gleason, any additional information you want to provide us before we take action on the requested continuance?
Good evening. Thank you, Chairman, members of the Commission. That is correct. We are requesting a continuance as a result of a request that we received from the applicant for the subject cases that you referenced.
Okay, and no date set on when we would see this back before us?
That is correct, Chairman. They are requesting continuance to no date certain.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. Any questions or comments? Actually, we can't discuss this. We're going to be continuing. So I'm going to ask for a motion to continue cases GPA 17-04, Z17-27, and Z08-02A.3. Motion for continuance?
Okay. I move that we continue it, all of the case GPA 17-04 and Z 17-27 until they're brought up again.
Thank you.
Anything else I should add to that? You read it so well.
Chairman, members of the commission, just one case number was missing from that motion, Z0802A.3.
Oh,
Okay,
yes.
thank you. 080,
02A.3.
okay, thank you.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to continue cases GPA 17-04, Z17-27, and Z08-02A.3 to a future date, yet to be determined. Commissioners, please vote. And it passes unanimously. Thank you, Commissioners. All right, on to item 5R. Bella Olivia, General Plan Amendment GPA 18-06 and Major PAD Amendment Z02-03A.2. This is a request to amend approximately 13.18 acres on the general plan from low-density residential, that's 2 to 5 dwelling units per acre with a target of 3 dwelling units per acre, to medium high-density residential, 8 to 15 dwelling units per acre with a target density of 12 dwelling units per acre. And a major amendment to the La Jolla Groves and La Jolla Landing PAD to modify the uses on the subject area from intermediate commercial C2 to multifamily residential. The site is located southwest of the southwest corner of 95th Avenue and Olive Avenue. Ms. Deaver, please present your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the commission, for the record, Lori Deaver, I will be presenting the case this evening. On the applicant for this evening will be Reese Anderson with Pugh and Lake. He is available for questions. To direct your view to the graphic on the screen, the subject site is located south and west of 95th Avenue and Olive Avenue. It's approximately 12.79 acres, depending on what you look at for a dedication. One correction to the packet, there were a couple of typos in there. The unit count is only 112 units being proposed, not the 120 listed in the packet. That will be a condominium development project, which I will go into more detail here shortly. The two requests before you this evening, the first one is a minor general plan amendment that is looking to change from low-density residential to medium-high-density residential. The ranges are before you on the screen. The target density is also listed as well. I will be presenting more information in that on our analysis very shortly. From the rezoning request, this is part of an existing PAD of a much larger area. It encompasses both the commercial kind of vacant property under construction that you see on the screen, the piece before you this evening, and also the residential piece to the south of the property as well. So at one point, this was a much larger PAD area. So the area of change this evening is solely for the kind of colorful graphic that you see before you, to change it from a C2 type of use to a multifamily use. From a context standpoint, this has a diverse range of land uses, and so bear with me as I kind of walk you through it. Starting from the west-hand side, you have the Mission RV and mini storage. To the north, there are apartments and also commercial properties, including the Circle K up there. Also, to the east, within kind of the approximate northeast corner, you have a proposed Francis & Sons car wash immediately next to the property. Further still, you have the Quick Trip on the hard corner. And then you have the West Olive Farms immediately across 95th Avenue. To the south, you have the La Jolla Grove community. As I mentioned before, this was a part of the original PAD application for this property. Let me walk you through some of the details of the proposal this evening. Bella Olivia is 112 condo units. It consists of 16 buildings. Each building is a 7-plex. There are 2 gated entries. One is on the north of Olive Avenue. There is a deceleration lane being proposed. The second is one on 95th Avenue, also deceleration lane proposed. I'll walk you through, but there are centralized amenities, as you see kind of on the screen, in a large green belt area to the south adjacent to the residential community. So the first set of amenities is kind of the clubhouse location, pool, Ramada area as well. This is accessible through sidewalk throughout the community. As you see, there's an internal spine road, but there is sidewalk from both the sevenplexes on both sides of the street. So to the south, within the Greenbelt, there are a number of amenities, as you see on the screen. There's a dog park, there's a soccer area, there's Ramada's shade structures, also retention basins, kind of a pedestrian corridor in there. So an example of the amenities being proposed are kind of illustrated at the bottom. These are the conceptual elevations currently being proposed. It is a two-story elevation, and this would be typical for all of the buildings. As you see here, additional amenity areas, including in the far right corner, that would be the gated entry. You have theme walls also illustrated for your reference as well. From staff's analysis, this is where I'll spend a little bit of time on. From a general plan standpoint, we have a variety of kind of land use categories within the area. When we did the major general plan amendment not that long ago, neighborhood commercial was changed to the north to what you see now. The reason why the Quick Trip is not being shown as commercial is at the time it was still kind of it was conceptual under construction. Had it been further down the road, we would have converted that color from low density residential to a commercial category establishment. So effectively, those kind of three corners of 95th and Olive would be showing as a commercial setting. To the west as well, that is an RV and a mini storage. That is not what you would typically see in a low-density residential setting. That is more of a commercial use in nature. Why we did not make that change is because at some point in time we do see that area potentially redeveloping, and at this point right now we would like to continue positioning the property as potential residential in the future. So even though it is a commercial use, we're just not showing it on the general plan. So effectively, we have a very diverse range of uses. On the east-hand side is larger lots. Those would be estate density residential. You have low-density residential down below. As to the requests, they are asking for medium-high density as a category. Not all multifamily type of products fall into the same category, and so I'll kind of go into that into detail. We've had a number of applications that would be looking at more of a hybrid, of a bungalow kind of style. That would be typically within a medium density category. The footprint would be similar to a single family home. So the result would be some private open space within the actual unit itself and some centralized open space for the community. That density would approximately range anywhere towards a higher end of the 5 to 8 category. We've also had some that go into a medium high density category depending on the shape of the site. To have this be considered medium high density, it's actually more a part of the configuration of the site and not necessarily of the product. A condo unit, on the other hand, is more kind of clustered together. So what you will see in terms of less private space for the residents and more of a centralized amenity package instead, which is why you have the Greenbelt area and the centralized amenities. So effectively, because of the shape and the size, it's triggering into the medium high density category. If there was some additional area added onto the site, it would be at the higher end of a medium density residential. So I just wanted to illustrate the difference between like multifamily kind of products as to why one would fall into one category versus the other. In terms of looking at the fit and the form, which is the land use question before us this evening, We believe because of the amount of commercial on the categories around it, both on the north and the kind of to the east of it in the corner, also to the west of it, those are kind of a C2, C3 type of use. So how do you make an appropriate transition between commercial to a residential property? Currently, the site is a C2 PAD use. Typically, those would require the back of the buildings would go closest to the residential center. You would have more back of house operations occurring, so you would have to mitigate noise, truck traffic, and everything else in that kind of condition. So we would typically ask if this was to develop in a C2 category for additional mitigation to occur. In transitioning to a residential product, a multifamily residential product, we have the ability to moderate, if you will, to move the units further up, provide an appropriate buffer between the existing homes to the south and to balance out the commercial uses to the north. So we believe that going to a multifamily residential use in this particular location is appropriate given the diverse range of uses surrounding it. From a noticing standpoint, we did send out both notice of application and notice of hearing postcards. The site was posted in accordance with our standards. The applicant has had 2 neighborhood meetings. The first one was September 25th, 2018. Approximately 53 attendees were there. Second meeting was held January 29th, 2019. Approximately 26 attendees were there. Topics included in that discussion regarding the southern setback, property values, traffic, and school capacity. So I'll touch on those items now. So from the southern setback standpoint, originally the proposal included both condominiums and single-family homes. It had a total of 114 units. After that first meeting, the applicant subsequently went back and modified the application to all condos, dropping it to 112 units. In doing so, they pushed the units closer to the commercial setting, and as you see, added the additional green belt along the south of the residential area. There is approximately 151 feet from building to building, as you see from the La Jolla Groves the community to the south to the condo units to the north. So they have made that adjustment in the plan. So in terms of property values, that is something that staff is not technically experienced to answer that question, because to a certain degree it is a subjective kind of topic. What we do look at from a land use standpoint in making our recommendations is the fit, the form, and the character. Does the project fit within the neighborhood? Does it have the appropriate form? Is it mitigating what we believe are possible issues from either neighborhood or other conditions, operational standpoint? The character. Does the elevations, do the amenities, and kind of the package fit within the surrounding community? So we look at it from that standpoint, and we're not able to look at it from a property value standpoint. From the traffic issue, there are 2 entrances, as I discussed. There is a centralized spine throughout the community. There are 2 deceleration lanes, both on Olive, both on 95th. If this was to proceed as a commercial use, the number of trips per day would be greater than what you would have if this is approved as multifamily residential. And if you have questions in that regard, I would then kind of direct those to our staff member down the way to provide additional input on that one. From a school capacity standpoint, the school district has provided communication to us that the applicant has or will be entering shortly into a developer assistance agreement. So we have provided communication and have received communication from the school district in that regard. Boom. Based on staff's findings, we are indicating that this particular project does advance the general plan by providing additional housing options throughout the community. It does better reflect the needs of the community while accounting for the built and existing environment given the diverse uses surrounding the property in itself. And we do think that the proposed layout does provide a better transition from the commercial areas to the residential. Secondly, on the rezoning case, we do think that the medium-high density residential designation is appropriate based on the type of use and the location. The PAD does advance the goals and objectives of the general plan. Again, we believe this is more compatible with a diverse range of uses, and it does exceed the open space requirement and the number of amenities being proposed. For this evening, we are recommending two actions. We are asking Commission to both recommend approval to redesignate the general plan from low-density residential to medium-high density residential. We are asking and recommending on the rezoning case that the Commission allow for a rezone request from the PAD to eliminate the commercial uses to the proposed PAD to allow the multifamily uses subject to the conditions in Exhibit 1 in your staff report. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you for your report. So we're not, just on, these are the only two things that we act on them separately, correct? Just these two items here. Okay, in this order. All right, do any commissioners have any questions of staff at this point? Well, I got a few. So this existing commercial, or this existing land use is commercial C2. That's the way it's zoned now. If we had a Home Depot wanted to come in and build a big warehouse store, could they do that? Tell me what kind of uses could go on that property right now with the existing zoning.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, that is a good question. So a typical C2 use, you may have a larger type of anchor store, such as grocery store, hardware store, et cetera, that may be in line with stores. And those, once you have an inline configuration, those are typically kind of pulled back to the site, and you would have kind of a sea of parking up front is what the typical configuration is. Also, on a C2 use, you could have individual pad buildings for restaurants. You can have retail in there. So there's a variety of use. So think of C2 as what you would normally find where you would have the intersection of two arterial streets together. So the larger street, larger capacity, that would be kind of a C2 use. If I can harken back to Mr. Allen's case, those particular areas are a C2 use. So you saw two grocery store anchored uses, inline suites of retail or restaurant. And so essentially it's a much larger and more intense kind of feel to it than what you would see in a neighborhood setting.
Did you attend the public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, I did not. If you had a particular question, Mr. Hawkes was available at the second meeting.
Okay. I'm curious because I leaned to the report. I got the impression that a lot of residents wanted that to stay commercial. Or what was the breakdown between people who wanted it? Obviously, some wanted not developed at all. That's not reality.
Mr. Chair,
Some
members of
wanted
the committee.
residential, some commercial. I didn't know what the breakdown was. It a majority, half?
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
Curious.
members of the commission, I did attend the second neighborhood meeting, not the first one.
Okay.
And when the applicant rises, they can probably give you a better breakdown of that. From my observation, there were some people that were in support. There were some people that were not in support of this use, and others that perhaps wanted to see it even lower density residential. So I think there's still a mix of opinion there.
Mix of opinion on that. Interesting. Okay. These are 2 stories tall. Are we any concerns about line of sight into backyards south of this location? Where porches be facing that way? That's a concern I always have with these kinds of developments.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I would invite the applicant to speak a little further
Speak
on
to
that
that.
one. We could look at it during the site plan review process to look at balcony configuration or to look at the floor plan in itself in further detail if you'd like.
And let me just, I get concerned whenever we take commercial stock out of our inventory, that bothers me. Commercial brings more tax revenue than any home development ever will. Is it the feeling that this cannot be developed feasibly as a commercial location because it's not on a corner? Is that the feeling here, is because of the location, is proximity to the county island there? I mean, tell me, has it been pitched as a commercial property, for example, and hasn't been successful? What's your understanding of that?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, we have had some development, excuse me, some development activity, some requests going forward. Those have not materialized. As you can see, the site has remained vacant. From an economic standpoint, that we set the general plan and the vision of the area. That kind of guides us on how we look at growth and redevelopment. Staff doesn't go out and look for applications. We are more in a reactionary mode. And so I would defer to the applicant to address as to why this site is more marketable in this condition.
As a residential versus commercial. I didn't know if our economic development team had been trying to attract, working with the applicant to attract commercial. Maybe not the case. Thank you. All right. I do have a couple, since I've been rambling on here, I have a couple more commissioners that want to speak, so I'm going to be quiet, and I'm going to start with Commissioner Condi. You have a question?
When we made the general plan the first time, we had all of these corners that we thought would be box stores or strip malls, or they're not being used. They end up being vacant land, just sitting there. My mother didn't live very far from here. She was in Sun. Walked by this 30 years ago, and we see all over the place these corner lots from an arterial like Olive and another street, sitting there waiting for something to come in, and they don't come in. And so I think this is, and I can speak as an appraiser about value, I think this would add value because this is going to be ownership. The condominiums are going to be ownership rather than apartments. And so I think it's a nice transition from single family to the ownership rather than an apartment complex. And looking at backyards, it appears to me that only in building 6 would there be anybody looking into the backyard of the single family homes because of the way the buildings 9 through 16 are oriented into greenbelt areas. So I think this is and as for the school, I'm going to ask the applicant, I hope he mentions how many are going to be 2-bedroom units, 1-bedroom units, studio units. This is a very nice kind of development for first-time home buyers or empty nesters that own when they want to go in and start accumulating equity, but they don't have the ability to do exterior maintenance of a single-family home. And so I'm going to be asking those questions. But this is, there are not that many condominiums out there. People are either into apartments or single-family homes. And this is something a little different. And having the garages underneath is unusual, and it's also nice rather than having a lot of open parking with covers, because that's getting also very old style. People want to have their garages because they want to have a place for their stuff. So 1.5 garage, you have your car and you have your stuff. Or you have a 2-car garage and you have your stuff. Because otherwise you have to have it someplace else. So, and the buildings look really good in the design. They're much more contemporary. And this has been an old part of Peoria for the 30 years I've been here. So I think this is a really interesting application. I'll be very interested to hear what the neighbors have to say, because I haven't seen anything come along like this in a long time. And as I said, I've walked that area for many years, and it's just been vacant. And if you think a Home Depot is going to come in there you would have traffic and you'd have, it's not going to happen, Oro Lowe's. It's not going to happen. If it hasn't happened already, it's not going to happen. Thank you.
Commissioner Condi. Did you have any questions for staff or just that comment?
I have that comment.
Your questions are for the applicant. Is that what you're saying?
My questions are.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hutchinson, you're not, okay. All right. I want to open the public hearing. Is the applicant present tonight? Please state your name and address for the record.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Reese Anderson, and I'm with the law firm of Pugh and Lake. My address for your record is 1744 South Val Vista, number 217 in Mesa. And thank you for having us tonight. It's a pleasure to be with you. And staff has done an excellent job of giving you a very thorough presentation, so I don't intend to go over any of those previous points if that's okay with you. I want to be respectful of your time and the citizens' time they're here. I'm going to ask Mr. Gleason, if that's right, if you could just forward to, I think it's slide 14 or 15, and we'll keep going forward if you could. I'm going to do my best. I was writing the questions that you, Mr. Chairman, and Commissioner Condi had down as quickly as I could, and so we'll go forward a couple more slides. Well, go back one if you could. That on your screen, I just wanted you to get a bit of the history here, and I'm sorry to go out of order a little bit. This is what we showed in September. 114 total units. You can see the lighter color is single-family detached homes. And that southern separation there, you know, of course, in the corner, that was a side yard, but that was about 50 feet from property line to the front of that home. And this is what we talked with the residents about there. And so we wanted to be as sensitive as possible. We listened to all those concerns. And Mr. Chairman, you had a question about what were the major concerns that were talked about. And there were lots of voices. We heard people say, I want commercial. I want it nothing. I want it to be 1 acre lots. Some said, oh, no, all single family detached. There were voices all over. We tried to really gel it down to the ones that there was a more of a consensus on, as well as ones that we could do something about. For example, like you said, it's just not going to remain vacant. If you'd go forward, please, Mr. Gleason. Another one. Please keep going. More. There we go. Backing up in a little more history, because we started with this conversation of what's on the property now. Well, this is the approved site plan under the La Jolla Landing, La Jolla Groves PAD. And you can see it's a typical standard kind of big box approach. And those setbacks there are 60 feet, 64 feet right there. But if you look at the PAD standards, that allows the rear yard setback, I don't have them here, but it's in this PAD, rear yard to be 20 feet. So if someone wanted to do a site plan, you might be able to get even closer. And so that's what it looks like today. When we translate that to traffic counts, if I could just jump ahead, when you look at the traffic counts for that we've submitted as part of our report, the trips per day are 14,000 plus trips a day. Okay, that's, with this project, we are 94% less. It's a huge, significant reduction. And to mitigate things even further, there is no requirement under the traffic standards to install deceleration lanes because of the small amount of traffic here. But we've done so both on 95th and on Olive Avenue. The reason for that is we were trying to be sensitive to those concerns about traffic. So where we can, we've made those type of improvements. This separation distance, I think there was a question raised about side yards, view, et cetera. Let me just give you again, if you look at that neighborhood to the south of us, there's 12 homes there that are part of that neighborhood. 7 of them are two-story homes. We heard those comments about giving a greater separation, a greater distance. And so now you can see there the closest one is 107 feet from the building to the property line, and you can see the row of trees in there, all placed strategically to help try and keep that privacy, keep that separation. These are significant distances. I can't think of a project that's similar to this with this amount of open space, these amount of buffers. I'm really pleased and proud of this developer who has created this green space along the south. I think it's just absolutely fantastic. If you go forward, please. Okay, well, maybe I missed it, but let me see if these were the main points. I apologize. Thank you for your patience. Go there. One of the questions, well, I don't know, just close out and go to 16. Thank you for your indulging me. Mr. Chairman, you asked about commercial types of uses, et cetera. Let me just share. I happen to have a little bit of anecdotal knowledge on this because I've represented the 2 prior owners of this property, and they've held it for years. And while you can see those prime pieces on the frontage kind of being taken by Quick Trip, and now Francis and Sons, which we hope is moving forward, but we haven't seen anything out of them for a long time. But behind there is no interest. There just hasn't been any interest. And my goodness, if you haven't paid attention to the news, you see the number of retail stores closing with this new online. It is a new retail world out there. And so all of that business model is absolutely changing. And I share that with you anecdotally. We could produce studies, but to say this site, we've personally experienced it, is not getting the looks on these big box, even medium box uses for this site. So with the frontage gone, I see nothing that would be attractive or appropriate or desirable for that back section, except for this use. I think this is an absolutely great use to put in there. And when we look at good land use planning principles, this is that transitional use. It's ownership based, it's sensitive to the needs of the area, provides additional housing opportunities, which, by the way, these units range from 831 square feet up to 2,100 square feet. And we're going to sell them between $175,000 up to $375,000. That's what we're looking at right now. And so these are going to sell for a significant amount of money. On the issue of property values, one of the concerns we always hear in these projects is this is going to hurt as a residential neighbor, it's going to hurt my property values. And that was one reason why we removed the single-family detached homes, because now there's no longer that apples-to-apples comparison. Now it's a totally different condominium versus a home. And so you just don't have that. Plus, these homes we anticipate will sell, these condominiums will sell at a higher per square foot rate than the adjacent properties around us. So as the cliche goes, we're hopeful that a rising tide floats all boats. I think I answered the question about commercial, although I could talk more if you'd like. Line of sight, I think I answered that question, a little bit of discussion there. That is a significant buffer. Most of the time you see rear yard setbacks in a residential capacity of 30 feet, right, which would be a larger one. So here at 107, very significant. Plus 2 rows of trees. I think that we've done a great job of addressing those issues. Commissioner Condi, you asked about the school and students, I believe it was. I went back and looked at my emails real quick, and in my emails with Mike Moss, I asked him what the ratio is. Mike Moss is the development coordinator with the Peoria School District. He said these are a ratio of 0.442 for condominiums, townhomes. I did the math, and I came up with 49 additional students between the elementary and the high schools, spread throughout the system. So that was the answer for that question. Mr. Chairman, I hope I answered all of the questions. I know there's some citizens here who want to talk. I'd like to reserve time just to share a few thoughts or answer more questions that you or others may have. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Could you stay there at the podium
Yes.
just for a second here? Do any commissioners have any questions of the applicant? I think Commissioner Condi, you said you did.
Bath units there are?
Okay, I'm going to do my best to go from memory because there are in each building there is one bedroom, there is one 3-bedroom, and then everything in between is 2 bedrooms.
Okay, so there are no studios, there
There
are...
are no,
Thank
absolutely
you.
not, no. And I want to point out that you noticed it, and I think you picked up on this, every unit has its own garage,
Right,
which I think is a sign of good quality. And if you look carefully, each of the units, there's 4 units that have an actual rear yard, and that's got a 15-foot depth. I mean, that's almost like you're in a single-family detached back home on some of our smaller lot product today. And then these upper level units have some decks. So I think this is a great design that they've done.
I have another question, and that is, have you looked at the CCNRs? Have you started writing your documents yet?
Oh, the answer is no. The answer is no. But those all come right in this, we were right on the cusp.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking is, I know there's going to be a question, there always is, are they going to allow rentals, and are they going to allow pets? Those are the
Yeah.
two major questions for any property like this.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, I think we all know, or well aware of state law on that topic of rentals, right? Which is that this is a for sale project, and that you can't prohibit somebody from renting their unit. Just like all of our neighbors around us, like you and your neighborhood, those type of restrictions are just illegal. They're not enforceable. I've tried my best to persuade everyone this is a for sale, ownership-based project, and there's no intent to do anything different than that. That is absolutely the honest truth. That being the case, I can promise you that this owner here wants this to be as high a quality a project as possible, and so I know they will do what they can to make sure that the right people are there and behaving appropriately. On the issue of pets, I don't know the answer to that. I'm thinking of their other projects that they have, where I know they have some restrictions on pets, I think on size, et cetera, but it's not a complete prohibition.
Another question I have is, when you developed this, you must have had a target market.
Yeah.
And would you share with us, when you looked at this, you said, who is the kind of person, or who is your target market for these properties?
Very good question, and through the chair, I think the target market here, as I've understood it from talking with the owner, Bellaflor Communities, this developer here, is really younger families and those empty nesters. It's not meant to be a typical, what you and I would think, a single-family detached neighborhood. So these are young professionals who want to live in the area, close to a freeway for good access, et cetera. We also expect some retirees to be here in this community. To me, I look at this and say this would be a great place I would love for my children. My oldest son's right into the marrying age. I would love for him and if he would get married, that's a whole nother story. I would love for them to live here. I would love to live here. I think it's a really great project.
I was thinking that it might be for people that are here seasonally.
Yeah.
Who come down from other areas, in the winter. This is great for spring training. The first 4 months, there are certainly lots of people for, sports events down there. And so I was wondering if that was, because the price point is appropriate for a second home for many of these people.
Those are certainly on the list.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'll be interested in to hear what the public says.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hutchinson, you have a question for the applicant?
Yeah, thanks. So, and I think I echo a couple of commissioners here. I think this is a great-looking project. I think it's a good fit for the area, but I also want to hear from the neighbors that are impacted. A project like this, again, I bring this up to a lot of the presenters here about utilizing local labor to
Yes.
build things like
Yeah.
this. We have workforce committees, workforce boards, both county and local, that could very well place Peoria residents into construction jobs on the building of buildings in their community. I'd appreciate it if you would work with your development team in hiring a local workforce to go out and build these units.
Thank you.
That being said, I think the city is in need of more of this type of infill project. I thought the pricing range that you mentioned was surprising. But some more affordable type housing, that is, the high quality look that this one brings to a community, I think the city needs a lot more of. So I like the design, I like the fit. of the project at this point. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Can you just speak a little bit more to the vegetative barrier you talked about? You talked about putting the trees. Are these going to be large box trees, or are we talking little dinky things that are going to take
No.
20 years to grow up?
Mr. Chairman, absolutely. Let me find the right slide and get us there quickly, if we could. Earlier on. 9, number 9. There we go. Mr. Chairman, you can see there, they're all of them, they're 24-inch box. We've got Cathedral Oaks, Mondale Pines, Chamel Ash, Ali Elms. It's a nice variety, all of a larger size. And I did count them at one time, but I think it's 100-plus trees that you're looking at right there in that stretch.
Helpful. And just another question. I wasn't clear on why not single-family homes. I'm not clear on why that didn't make economic sense on this parcel.
Well, the answer to that is really simple, which is in trying to balance the right type of lot there and fit it in and make the project pencil does not work. Okay? It's really that simple.
Because of the lot size?
The lot size. So in our discussions with the staff, they were insisting on a lot size similar to what's directly to our south, right? If we're going to match, you and I see these discussions happen all the time, right? Where two residential single-family detached projects come together. And along those boundaries, we do our best to match size. Agreed? So at that point, when we started looking at it and trying to make this project pencil and work from a sewer perspective, this site has some sewer challenges. To look at it from the other utilities, it just did not work. Did not work. So the best thing to do here, and then recognizing that we're moving closer to Olive Avenue, as well as the existing Quick Trip and the Francis and Car Wash, we felt this use was the best one. Plus, it provided some additional housing opportunities in the area.
So were apartments considered?
No, apartments have never, ever been considered here. Now, you and I might say, well, they're a similar use to condominiums, but I could tell you from day one on this project, the Bella Flor Communities, which is a local builder, have never talked about apartments on this. I hope that answers the question.
It does, thank you. Are you in agreement with the conditions and stipulations outlined in the staff report?
Thank you for reminding me. Yes, we are in absolute agreement with those conditions.
Perfect, thank you. I don't see any further questions from commissioners, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Urs, do I have all the speaker request forms on this item? All right, I'm going to continue on with the public hearing here, and we've got a number of people who would like to speak to this. Please, I'm going to ask for your forgiveness ahead of time if I butcher your name. It is not intentional. All right, we're going to start off with, I have, the first one here has 2 names on it, but I'm going to ask one of you to come up versus 2, or if you want to speak separately, you can. But I'm going to go with the first name I see here, Vanette Christmas. Would you like to speak? Or Karen Eisenbart or Hart? Eisenbart? Okay. Yeah, if you could come up and state your name and address for the record, we'd appreciate it.
My name is Karen Eisenbart. I'm at 9603 West Reno View Drive, so I'm in the La Jolla Groves area. We have been pretty active in trying to get people here and make them aware of what was going on. So we ended up creating, we heard so many concerns, we ended up creating a petition, and we've got over 60 signatures on that, plus we have a couple petitions that are still out and did not get back to me in time for today. So I apologize for that. But we had 60 people who would rather have it stay the intermediate. We left both. I can read this to you if you'd like. If you have the petition, would you like me to read it?
It's your 3 minutes. Use them however you would like.
We, the undersigned owners of property within 1 mile of the requested zoning change described in the above referenced address, and we did talk about the address, the same that is here that you've seen, do hereby protest against any change in zoning to any classification other than maintaining the current intermediate commercial, C-2, use or a zoning change to low density residential. So those were the two choices that we put in our petition, and that's, again, over 60 people would rather keep it commercial or go to low residential density. This property directly adjoins the residential property, and we oppose any zoning that will increase the noise and traffic that would detrimentally affect the peaceful enjoyment of our homes, along with our ability to access our neighborhood. We also feel that any change in zoning of this property would negatively affect the value of our homes, and we've had a little bit of a discussion on that, the apples to oranges and apples to apples. Safety and education of children through overcrowding classrooms and road safety due to the increase in traffic at this corner. While we do appreciate that the builder has heard part of what we've heard, he did not hear in that first meeting. Well, I'm sure he heard, but we hear sometimes what we want to hear. And he did not hear that we did not want condos. We were concerned that the condos would end up to be a lot of rentals and that could devalue our homes, and you just don't have, we've had rentals in La Jolla Groves, and some of them are amazing and others were kind of scary. So we wanted that not to be. We did broach the subject of the barrier because it was so close initially, but quite honestly, if they had two-story home with the same size lots or fairly comparable and kept it low residential, we would be much happier, because those are the concerns, is there are too many houses going in. I recognize that they did talk to the school district, and the school district said that they could accommodate, but at this point in our educational system, I am a former teacher, we know that there are hundreds and thousands of teacher jobs that are not being filled currently. So to add more to our schools affects the education of our future. So we are concerned with that as well. We appreciate the buffer. We appreciate the fact that they're looking at the traffic as far as entering and exiting on that. The line of view that you discussed, thank you for bringing that up again. If the lot was a residential one with the same back lot, with another one, we don't have as much a concern with that. We are concerned, again, it was approached that $175,000, that's 7 homes right there that are very possibly going to be bought as an investment, so that they will end up to be rentals, they will end up to be seasonal, and then renting on seasons that they're not there. We love new neighbors. It's a very comfortable place. We want to keep it that way. This is going to be a gated one. I understand that. That would be fine. If it was a gated one, we'll still get to know them, because we like to invite people over, and so we'd have fun. But those are the biggest concerns that we have right now, are that we want it a low. We want it to maintain our neighborhood. I have talked also to a lot of the neighbors who are on that southeast corner, who are in the farmland. Some of them don't want it changed at all. We recognize that something needs to come in, and I would rather have control of that, a voice from our community and how it affects us. Something needs to go in. We still need to continue to grow. I recognize that. I think we all recognize that. We just want a little more control over it. We can't do comparable to what they have. Those are huge lots, but if they could stay within the size of La Jolla Groves and the residential area behind us, I don't think we'd have much of a problem. Any questions? And thank you again for your time and listening. I'm trying to go really fast. I've got 3 minutes. I took a class where I had to do that, and it's like, bam.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your comments. All right, next I'm going to call up Grant Coleman. Again, please state your name and address for the record. Grant Coleman, welcome.
Yes, my name is Grant Coleman. I live at 9550 West Alice Avenue. I'm actually one of the houses that's right behind the Greenbelt. So I know my house will be affected more than anybody, or all the other people that live there too. And I just had a pool put in, so I know, for me personally, I don't want houses there or condos, or just for the fact that they might look at us or whatever. And also if they're saying they put in trees or whatever, it's gonna, the tree, when it's gonna be autumn, whatever, the leaves are gonna fall in our pool and all that. So other than that, I just want to state that when we actually bought the home They told us specifically that was zoned for a C, a low density, the commercial lot, and that was it. And that's one of the reasons why we bought the house. We did not want any more living space around us or anything like that. So that's just my concern, other than the fact that I know they were talking about how they didn't put people in or whatever. From my understanding, they tried to put an autism a school for the deaf in there, but it was denied for some reason. I think it's because they wanted entrances on both Olive and 95th Avenue, so that's why it was denied. But in this case, they're doing the same thing. I don't know. I may be wrong. I don't know, but that's what I've heard. That's about all I have. My concerns, other than the fact that, again, the housing prices may go down, may be affected. And I know it's going to cause a lot more traffic. They said there's commercial lots around us, but the only really commercial lot right now is the QT, and the across the street is the Circle K. Other than that, you have a church in front of us, and then you have the big lots that are on the east of us. So there's not really a lot of commercial there. So I'm open to the fact that they keep it commercial. They keep it putting businesses in there. It's fine with us. That's all I have to say. Any questions?
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
All right, next speaker is David Mangiapane. Mangiapane, sorry. You don't wish to speak? Okay. All right, how about Alvin Vaughn? Do you wish to speak? All right, come up and state your name and address for the record, please.
Alvin Vaughn, 9609 West Echo Lane. I'm concerned about the traffic. It seems that every time I go through there, there's always so much traffic now coming to and from the school. And although I hear the comment about 14,000 entrances and exits, I guess, too, I'm not quite sure how that works. I don't know how you can alleviate it with any project, but it does concern me. I sometimes have trouble getting up and down the street because of the traffic. I remember when, a long time ago, when there was an occasional car through there. So whatever can be done to alleviate that problem is a big concern to me. Thank you.
You. All right, my next speaker form is from Deidre Tofam. My apologies if I mispronounced that.
Hi.
And please state your name.
I'm an agent.
If you could state your name and address for the
There
record,
we go.
please.
That better?
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm a real estate agent, and I have a few questions.
I'm sorry.
about this.
You can state your name and address for the record.
I'm Deidre Topham.
Okay.
Okay.
And your address?
I live in La Jolla Groves. My property does back up to the green belt there. I'm a real estate agent, and I have a few, I'd call them discrepancies. Looking at the median price for properties within the square mile area runs at $230,000. That doesn't include Sun Air, which is 55-plus community, because it doesn't really fit in with comps. They're talking about selling these homes at, I'm sorry, I lost my note, 175 to 375,000 for a condo. I would love to see that kind of money being spent for them. I don't see it happening. I don't see the probability that that's going to happen. My other issue would be, we're not looking at the property, and I know that you can't because this is a city, but beyond Darren Groves and all the way to the back of, forgot the name of the community, the new one off of Olive at 107th, is all county property. It's owned mostly by the same family. Who's held on to it? I believe it is the Johnson family. Who's held on to it in hopes of selling it for development. You won't have any say in that. The types of lots, the ones between the river and the Olive development off 107th would probably only fit apartments. There's a property directly behind the City of Peoria property where the water treatment place is. It's owned by the same person. He owns 3 lots. The middle lot has already been zoned for urban commercial. If you look at what he's got written there, he already has a plat map for an apartment complex. We're looking at lots and lots of residential being added to the area, whether or not it is City of Peoria. It's probably going to happen. We don't have a whole lot of commercial property on this side of the 101. The 101 stands as a barrier. People don't like to cross it. People don't want to cross it in the mornings and the afternoons. The traffic is terrible. They'd like to stay on their own side and visit businesses that are within easy reach. We're turning into a bedroom community. Is that really what we want for our area? We're also looking at, let's put it bluntly, some of the highest priced homes in 85345, and we want to put condos next to them. My other issue with this company, real quick, is that the other complex that they have, Bella Victoria, is all rentals. All rentals. It was built as condos. They are all rentals. I'm concerned.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Paul Hunting. If I can have you give your name and address for the record, please.
Last name is Hunting, as in duck hunting. First name's Paul, 9538 West Alice Avenue. The house is located where the goalposts are going to be for the soccer field, I think. So I'd like to see a permit that they can't use it before 6 o'clock when I wake up most mornings. I have a couple of concerns. Most of it's been already talked about, the traffic and so on. My main concern is I find this entire meeting to be kind of ham in a sense because they've already started grading. There's already a sign up there. It's been going on for 2 weeks. So I don't know, how can you start a project and then have all of us come in? It seems to me like it's already ongoing. So I don't know why we're even kind of here. And it's been going on for 2 weeks. They've graded, they've been bringing dirt in, and like I said, there's a sign already out there with the name of the development. So I don't know how that works, and already concluded. Why did you even set this meeting up? Thank you. And I don't mean to be rude when I say that, it just seems to me.
Dan. Well, we'll make sure the applicant addresses that point. Thank you. Larry Camp is the next one who's indicated an interest in speaking. If I could have your name and address for the record, please.
Larry Camp, 8711 North 95th Avenue. And really, most of my concerns have been addressed already quite adequately. I just want to add one thing. I have lived on 95th Avenue. I'm the 7th house down from Olive. I've been there for 40 years. I was one of the original homeowners on the 2-acre lots. And needless to say, we have seen a lot of change over the last 40 years. You want to talk about traffic. 40 years ago, 95th Avenue was a dirt road. And it went all the way from Olive to Northern. And quite frankly, we got very little traffic out there because it was all farmland. Everything was farmland except our little 2 streets, 94th and 95th. However, they put the school down the street. They put the housing development in front of the school, which is south of Butler. There have been like 3 developments installed since I've been there. The most recent are directly across from me. I face the west, so Continental Homes and I think Marlar Homes they built very nice low-density homes in there. And for respect and consideration of the neighborhood that already existed, those developers did not put in small lots with their houses. They're ample. In fact, the houses that we face have extra wide lots so they can have RVs in there in consideration for the existing neighborhood. So we've been fine with that. We've seen the changes. The traffic, of course, is horrendous, but we put up with it. But now the developer that wants to put in the condos, I mean, all the other developers seem to be considerate of the neighborhood that's already there. But to put in high-density condos in the neighborhood that already exists of low-density housing seems like, put it bluntly, disrespectful to the neighborhood. So basically, that's all I got to say about that. Thank you.
Get your comments. Virginia Carlson, do you wish to speak still? I can have you speak, provide your name and address for the record, please.
My name's Virginia Carlson, 8729 North 95th Avenue, and I live in the Horse Properties across the street. Most of my concerns have been addressed. However, I do want to go ahead and reemphasize the fact that my biggest concern, the condos look beautiful, but my biggest concern is that developers or investors are going to go in and buy those up, and that it's going to all be rentals. And then when they become rentals, it's like having apartments, and then it just pulls the neighborhood down. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ray Espinoza.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ray Espinoza. Live at 9545 West Alice Avenue, which is right across the street from where that fence is going to be at. Now, I moved down here from the city of East Los Angeles for a better life for me and my kids. So, in doing so, I moved here in 2006, and we all know what happened in 2007. So, I'm more concerned that the values of my home is going to drop with these homes going in there. My kids went to Sun Valley Elementary, all three of them. I only got one more in high school. Concern is the traffic that's on 95th Avenue. I don't know when the last time they did a check to see what the traffic was like from our last meeting, but it's gotten worse with the QTs going on. I know the gentlemen that live in the farm areas have seen a lot of traffic go in. I apologize, but we do love it living there. But, and even, going out for jogs and run, you can just see the traffic in the morning is just really, really bad to get there. I know the city wants to see more homes go on, but I just think that area should stay commercial. Like I said, there is other developments everywhere else where they do have condos. You see that at Westgate going on. There's a lot of condos, so if people are looking for those type of homes, maybe they should look over there in that area. Once again, if you see in the morning and you watch the kids go across the street from north of Olive onto South, you can just see cars are not even watching what they're doing. They come out of that QTs and they're going really fast. I see these kids jump back. So I just think with having this community there, it's just going to bring a lot more traffic. I don't know the statistics. They talk about how many kids are going to be added to this community. I think they're off by that. I think that should be re-looked at again. And the traffic as well, too. So I said I'd like to keep it commercial if we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your input. And the final speaker request form I have is for Mark Byam. Can I have you state your name and address for the record, please?
Got it. Mark Byam, 8787 North 95th Drive. Most of my concerns have been addressed. I would like to address the school concern. I have sat down with the principal at Sun Valley Elementary. They are almost maxed out. I have currently 2 children going to that school. I know what those classrooms are like. I actually used to work there. I can appreciate possibly 49 additional students from this development. Let's take in consideration everything else that is being added also. just a mile down the road from Olive Avenue, there's new homes going in there. Those children will be going to Sun Valley as well. So we're just not talking about 49 students going to these schools. We're talking about a lot more. Have we truly looked at the rest of the developments in that area that are going up and what's going to add to it? My conversation with the principal was that they're ready to bust out. They are not closing the doors like some of the Peoria elementary schools have because they're maxed out. They're very close. And I'm concerned about the education that my children will get because of, we're talking about only one community to this. Let's look at all the additional because there's more than 49 students that are going to be added to that area. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the speaker request forms I have. Before I, well, I'm going to keep the public hearing open because actually we want to ask questions of staff and the applicant. Anybody else want to speak on this matter? Do we have any more speaker request forms, Mr. All right. Staff, would you like to address any of the questions or comments that we heard from the public speakers?
Good evening, Chair Nelson and Commissioners. I'm Chris Lunka. I'm the city traffic engineer. And I thought it'd be appropriate to talk a little bit about the traffic on Olive Avenue and some of the discussions we've had about this site. I know that one of the residents brought to your attention that there was a potential school proposed for this site and that they weren't going to be allowed access to Olive, but we're allowing access to Olive for this particular site, which is true. So the reason why I wouldn't allow access to Olive for a school is because the school has a different intensity than a residential condo I guess, use for this particular. If you're familiar with when you drive next to elementary schools, charter schools, whatever school, they have a high peak demand in the AM peak and for the afternoon pickup. From the analysis, that peak demand, if we allowed the access to Olive, would have backed up through 95th Avenue, the traffic signal of the people trying to get to the school site. And that's just not acceptable. This particular product, we looked at the traffic, and that backup won't happen because you don't have that peak AM demand and you don't have necessarily that peak PM demand. Condos, especially 112 condos, if you do the traffic, and I mentioned this before in previous meetings, we have thresholds of certain levels of traffic analysis. And the bare bones minimum threshold is 100 peak hour trips. If it's less than 100 peak hour trips, we typically don't require a traffic study, just a statement. A statement just says this is how much this development's going to generate, and this is what we plan on moving forward with the project. If it's more than 100 peak hour trips, we're requiring a full-blown traffic study, which looks at the level of service at the intersections, the driveways, and that type of stuff. 112 condo units generate less than 100 peak hour trips, and per our standards, that would just require a statement. However, I required a full-blown traffic study from this developer because I want to look at 95th and Olive. I want to look at the driveway on Olive to make sure that left turns could be made, right turns coming into this site could be made without significant delays to traffic on Olive. And that's why I required the right turn lane from Olive into this site. Also on 95th Avenue, we required a right turn lane. Typically, we wouldn't require a right turn lane on a collector road like 95th Avenue, but that's a requirement. It would be a requirement regardless if this is a condo unit or retail. If it's retail, and I want to speak about that a little bit. So condos generate less than 100 peak hour trips. We consider it the low-level tier for a traffic study. If it's retail, say the similar site as was proposed, which is entitled for, which the approved site plan showed a strip mall and some boxes, that would be a significant traffic generator and attraction to the point where no access to Olive, at least left turn outs, would be allowed. Meaning that if we took away the Olive access, say it's only right in, right out only for Olive Avenue, all the pressure for a particular retail will be coming from 95th Avenue. And that will be significant. And so, and the reason why it'd be 95th is because we have to get them to the traffic signal, and that's where we're going to allow the left turns back out onto Olive. If we didn't force all the traffic to 95th and say it happens at that driveway location that's proposed on this, on Olive, the left turn exiting the project, if it was retail, will be a very poor level of service to the point where no one really will be able to make that left turn out, creating scenarios where you got Q1 on Olive blocking 95th Avenue, left turn going northbound from Olive, northbound on 95th. That queue will block into that left turn pocket. And so from a traffic perspective, 112 condos is a lower tier traffic impact. If it's retail, it would be more significant. And that's why when we are working with access issues, yeah, sometimes we do allow access on Olive, sometimes it's limited access on a road like Olive, but it depends on the use, it depends on what the projected level of service is for that particular access. And is it something, and also I look at the other driveways along Olive. Are we going to impact other driveways that are there today? If it's going to queue up into another driveway, we don't allow that access. And so all that analysis was done with previous development, the school, and with this particular development. And this one, from a traffic perspective, that driveway on Olive works. And we want that driveway because it does take pressure off the driveway to 95th Avenue and to the signal. If I could get more people using this driveway, less traffic on 95th. And I heard that there's concerns about traffic on 95th and also on Olive. And I'm not going to sit here and say we don't have a lot of traffic on Olive. We absolutely do have a lot of traffic on Olive. It's one of our priority corridors in the traffic engineering division, and we're looking at technology to try to address some of the issues out on Olive. Olive at times during the peak hours is very congested. And so what do I mean by technology? We're looking at the signals and we're looking at adaptive technology that basically what it means is the signals will be able to measure upstream, downstream traffic and be more reactive how the traffic is coming into a signal and adjust the signal timing accordingly. We're just simply not there yet. We need detection, we need better technology in our cabinets, but that's our next step on Olive Avenue. And so the traffic engineering department is aware of the traffic on Olive, and we know it's an issue. We also know that 95th and Olive is a congested intersection. So is the traffic interchange at Olive. And then even to the west, the next signal will be a signal that serves the fire station, and then you got 99th Avenue, which is a county signal. And so we are working with our partners, county for 99th and ADOT for the TI to see if we can make that corridor better. So I know traffic is an issue and we're trying to address it, but for this particular project, it is a low-tier traffic impact. And if it was retail, it would not be low-tier, it would be a next tier or 2 tiers higher than that. So I hope that answers your traffic questions.
Thank you, it did. Any commissioners have any questions for Mr. Lemke? Commissioner Conde, I have you down as requesting to speak. Perhaps that's an old request, or do you have a question? No, we're just taking questions at this point from staff, and I'm going to be asking some questions of applicant next.
Okay, then call me when I can make some comments.
All right, any more questions of staff? Would the applicant like to respond to anything that we heard from some of our speakers earlier, the public speakers? I'm particularly interested in the question about the activity taking place on the site right now. If you're knowledgeable of that, what that is.
Chairman Nelson and members of the commission, Anderson, glad to share some thoughts. Let me start with that question, which is, I'm not specifically aware of what that is. I can assure you right now that nothing untoward or improper is happening there. I do know that over the months that Quick Trip was building, they're finished now, and that Francis and Sons, et cetera, that there's been dirt work all across that site. They've been stockpiling dirt there for future use. As I mentioned, there's sewer issues. There's a lot of that area on the south will be used for future retention. But I'm not aware of anything specific that's happening now, but I can tell you that we don't treat this as a sham in any way.
All right, thank you.
I'm happy to.
Sorry. Well, just hold on. You mind if I give the applicant a chance to respond to some of the questions, and then I'll give the commissioners a chance to, I got you as well. So continue.
Let me touch on the topic of schools. That issue was raised quite a bit. I understand that that gentleman was at our first neighborhood meeting and went and spoke to the principal, and we have the utmost of respect for that principal and the good work that he's doing there. As you know, with the Peoria Unified School District, developers often enter these voluntary contribution agreements, which is what we're doing. And so by that method, we contribute approximately $84,000 towards their school budgets to help offset these things. But with all due respect to our great principals, they're not the decision makers. The district is the decision makers. And so when they look at those things and we work with them and we contribute voluntarily to the benefit of the schools, those are the people that you rely on for these decisions. And so that's what you have in front of you is the letter from the appropriate people at the school district on this issue. I know there was an allegation made about, hey, these guys are turning them into rentals. The Bella Victoria project, if you're not aware of it, I invite you to just Google it. It's an absolutely gorgeous project. It's in Mesa off of Ellsworth Road and US 60. And yeah, you know what? The owner decided they were going to keep that entire project in their own personal business portfolio as an investment. The concern about rentals always comes in that you have fractured owners, you know, so that in this case we'd have 112 owners, all renting to different people, all different management companies. The Bella Victoria project is a one-off for this company. And they kept that, the owner kept that in their own portfolio just to generate income. And that is an absolutely beautiful project. Every one of them, they're held in their own name. And that's the way it is. It was, enough said on that. I don't know that that's a real issue, but I wanted just to address some of these allegations. Me, I heard a lot of the same questions and concerns raised at the neighborhood meetings, and that we've done our best to address. We've given you prior thoughts and answers on those things. I'll just share one last one with you, which is this idea that this site should remain commercial. First of all, it's just not going to happen. Second, look at what you just heard from the city's traffic engineer as more evidence that when people look at this site to say, oh, this should be commercial, will this be a viable commercial site? And you look at the traffic that would happen there. You shop there once and you have a hard time getting out. Are you going back? No. This is the right use for this site. This makes all the land use planning principles. This makes all the sense in the world. So I just think overall, when you start to balance all the interests, this is a good project. I don't mean to ramble on, Chairman Nelson.
You're fine. I appreciate you coming back up and addressing some of those
Is there
issues.
anything specific you'd like me to address?
Well, we have a couple of commissioners ask some questions I believe are for you. So I'm going to start with Commissioner Dunn. You were the first to indicate you're wishing to ask a question. So
I have a couple of questions. One, in the back, in the green area, it talks about trash. What type of, are you going to have revetments there for storage for rubbish?
Maybe if you
At
could
the
restate
slide
the
I'm looking
question. You're looking at how we're approaching solid waste, how it will be collected?
Yes.
I think there's on-site dumpsters. They're along that spine road.
So towards the back? Where
Yeah.
are they located?
Well, and forgive me for now, I don't see exactly where they are on that. I think they're right north of those trees there, and maybe
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Dunn, I'd like to direct your attention right above the Ramada area next to the dog park if you go due north. I don't have, so from Building 6 over to the east, you see kind of 5 or 6 white areas. Those would be the receptacle locations. Currently, that is under review under a site plan application. That may not be the final location in which they are going to be at. That's still under review at this time by the city.
Thank you. Also, I wanted to find out, what is the, so Sun Valley Elementary was mentioned. As far as the high school, is that, because I know I live in the Pine District, and my daughter, had to go to a high school in Glendale. What's the school that would take the students for the high school there?
I'm not sure. I bet you, though, the folks behind us would know that answer. Tell us. I'm hearing
one
the
in
answer
Glendale,
is
Raymond
Kellis
Kellis. Okay.
High School. Yeah.
Okay. And then on the back, where the landscaping is, will there be a block wall back there, a sound wall?
So, Commissioner Dunn, currently, there's an existing wall along that entire boundary line, and that's these residents' northern boundary wall.
Can you address how high it is currently?
I think it's about a standard 6-foot wall, which would be fully appropriate for a project like this or any other.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Would like to recognize Commissioner Hutchinson.
Actually, my question was going to be redirecting back to the staff about addressing the current ongoing project out there. I've been looking at all the, my map on my phone here and looking at the property and its and its relevance to the current property. It does seem like this place is being graded currently. Are we aware of any permitted ongoing construction work on that property, on that particular property?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Hutchinson, the city is not aware of any permits being issued on the subject site itself. Typically, we would require a site plan and construction documents to occur, at least in the first review stage, before we would issue any at-risk grading permits. Likely, given the construction with Quick Trip, as the applicant has mentioned, there is some possibility that earthwork may have gone onto the adjacent site. We are not aware of that condition, and nor was a permit issued for the site in and of itself. So again, no grading permit has been issued for this site. So likely what you're seeing should be related to the Quick Trip application.
Okay, hold on a second here. Staff. Chris, were you going to say something?
No, so in the development process, right now, they're requesting a rezone general plan amendment. So there's no ability, there's no function of ours that we would ever issue a grading permit prior to a zoning decision. So, as Lori mentioned, if the zoning entitlement is approved later on in the process, the next stage of the process is the site plan review that occurs. And so the site plan review would have to be approved, and then we get into construction documents, and that's the point where we can consider possibly at-risk grading, but it should not be happening now. There certainly hasn't been any permit that's been issued.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add just one thing to
Yes,
that, which
go
is
ahead.
our client, Bella Flora Communities, does not own this property yet. And so I stand for you today. I don't discount or disbelieve anything I'm hearing from these folks. They've seen it with their own eyes. I just don't have any knowledge to speak about it. And I can promise you, too, the client has not asked us to do any grading. I just would be surprised if it's our client involved in that. I don't know who it is.
Fair enough.
But we'll get to the bottom of that, and by all means, if permits need to be issued, I'm sure the city staff's going to be on that tomorrow.
I as well. All right. Any further questions of the applicant or staff?
I'm sorry, did I?
Commissioner Hutchinson.
I heard a concern brought up, and again, I'm looking at the properties along the line here, and I could tell you from personal experience, I think you mentioned something, the number of 100 trees or so along that property line. There is numerous swimming pools in the row behind them. Is there any way to address that, or to make those, if there's going to be trees there, are they going to impact those property owners?
Commissioner Hutchinson, this is a great question. By all means, I'm standing here on the record tonight saying we are happy to coordinate with all of our neighbors to the south on the type of trees that go in there and the spacing away from that wall. As you well know, the city has perimeter landscaping requirements that we satisfy those. And here we are. But we're happy to go above and beyond to place those trees appropriately. This is just our first take on what we think is a good design, but by all means, we don't want to cause anybody any extra work, cause them any problems, so we are committed to working with these folks on both spacing, sizing, and the species of tree that go there.
Okay, so none of that's been selected, just the 24-inch box trees.
We're absolutely committed to larger trees there. We have been for a long time, but we're not rock solid. There's probably another sin in there. We're not taking a hard position that that should be the type of tree. We welcome that input and would love to have that input and collaborate on that together.
All right. Any further
Mr. Chair?
questions? Commissioner Hutchinson?
No, that's it.
Mr. Chair, if I could make a statement too.
Go ahead. Mhm.
So if this project, if the entitlement was to go forward, I mentioned that the site plan would be the next step. We certainly, even though there's a buffer requirement for a site plan in this condition, we have all the discretion in the world to work with the applicant, the neighborhood in terms of the placement of those trees. So that's not something that's set against there is discretion during that period.
Okay, thank you for that clarity.
Yeah, and we welcome that discretion.
All right, thank you. Chair recognizes Commissioner Condi.
I brought my computer. I'm an appraiser, and I've been studying neighborhoods and values, et cetera, for 30 years. And I specialize in the West Side, and I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission 30 years ago. So I've seen what's happened. Let me just mention a few things on demographics. One of the gentlemen came up and he said that he lived on 95th, and once they put the QT in, the traffic increased dramatically. What do you think is going to happen if that turns into commercial? If you think QT generated that, just imagine a commercial center. It's going to be outrageous. And what maybe you should do is go and talk to neighbors who have a commercial center directly behind their houses and ask them how they feel about what's happened, because you're going to have trucks loading and unloading at 4 and 5 in the morning into commercial, into stores, grocery stores, big box stores. It's going to be it would be a big traffic thing behind your house without a green belt, and it would be extremely noisy. It's often like people living on a golf course thinking it's great until they hear the people mowing the lawn at 5 in the morning. So it's one of those things that it seems like a great idea, but you really need to go and investigate it, because typically the property values that are directly behind commercials directly behind them, are lower. That's one thing than they would if it would be residential. That's a fact. You can check it out, but that's pretty much the way it is. That's one thing. Two, you have a whole different generation coming up that are having fewer children. And so your schools are peaking. We had the baby boomers. I'm a baby boomer. They peaked and then they dropped. We are seeing that. Millennials are having fewer children and they're having them later. This is really not conducive to having families in here. This is the kind of housing that professionals have, that, yuppies have, that don't have kids. And so you need to look at demographic studies, or what's happening with the next generation, and are they having kids that are going to be contributing to schools? Because typically they'll live in these places like this for a while, and then when they get married later, then they will move to a single family house. They won't stay there because there's no backyard for the kids to play in. So it's either very young children or maybe occasionally somebody with a teenager. That's just the way it is. As for values, these are higher priced. This is not the same thing as having low-income housing or having houses that are on 6,000 square foot lots where you can, share a cup of coffee with your neighbor by reaching out your side window. That would generate more traffic and lower your values than a high-end condominium project coming in. Now, you mentioned HOAs. Well, I'll tell you, HOAs can get together and they can decide not to have rentals, and that's why I asked. I know that for a fact because it happens all over Sun City when they don't have rentals. And yes, that's county area, but if it was state law, they still could put it in. So an HOA can be written so that rentals are not allowed, or a certain percentage are not allowed. Also, the state legislature has taken a lot of steps recently to prevent, vacation rentals by owner, because people were renting out their single-family homes. I know people who have left their homes for the middle of February to the beginning of April. They move all their things out, they lock a closet, and they rent it to baseball players. And people do that in some areas. So you would have that. They could prevent it by having HOA restrictions, which they can do, because the owners can decide, so you don't have rental units. So that's something. So as far as your concerns about traffic, it's going to be far more with commercial, just like you have far more with QT. You have no idea. Noise is going to be outrageous at very unusual times, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, late at night. If you have any questions, go and stand by, behind someplace that is developed the way you think it will be. You'll find out it's a different world. Talk to those neighbors and see how it's impacted them. Your values on high end, this is a high end place. It could be 175. I just checked, I have my computer up, so I just went through the tax records, and your properties are higher, but they're also bigger. But going from, they're in the price range of where your homes are, only it's a different lifestyle. It's a different lifestyle. And that's what we look for in Peoria, is a variety of lifestyle. So I think I've covered the chance of reducing the rentals, your home property values, the traffic, and the noise. So it's time, it's hard when you're older, and I'm certainly in the older thing where I used to think, oh, it should all be this way, but times have changed. The internet has made a huge impact on retail space. And the last thing you want is something that goes under. You don't want to see another Grand Avenue. You don't want to see that. You don't want to see strip malls. Look at the other side, what is it, 67th and Olive or something, where you have that strip mall that never gets enough people in it. That's the last thing you want to see, is a strip mall with vacant stores that nobody goes to. That would be just awful. That would devalue your neighborhood. So try to keep an open mind if this goes forward to what it could be. That's what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Condi. Chair recognizes Commissioner Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to follow up a little more on the commercial aspect. Cody, could you pull up that slide that showed the approved commercial plan for this site? When I think about this site plan, it looks to me like at best there would be perhaps one row of trees along the southern boundary with this layout. And I'm guessing it would be loading docks and garbage containers along that southern side. Is that correct?
Yes.
I guess from my point of view, this is what's being proposed today is a vast improvement over what's on the screen. And I can't imagine a more attractive or appealing use for this property than what's being proposed.
Thank you.
Have any questions or comments to staff or the applicant? I'm going to close the public hearing. Thank you. All right. Any other comments before we begin to take action? We're going to take these again in two separate actions. We'll be taking the first action on general plan amendment, GPA 18-08, followed by the rezoning case. Any commissioners have any further comment before we vote? Just a quick comment. Undoubtedly, I agree with what's been said about this development. Very high quality, gorgeous, gated, high end. Not something I'm convinced would negatively affect property values. I appreciate the measures that the applicant has taken to mitigate the effects of this project on the surrounding neighborhood, for sure. That said, I am not convinced that this is not, you could not put single-family homes on this development. We took action not long ago, this very commission, on a 12.5-acre site with Cortland Homes. 30 homes on that 12.5 acres. It was economically viable. It was 71st Avenue and Thunderbird. I'm having trouble understanding and being convinced that that wouldn't work here. I'm in total agreement. I like to tell neighbors who want commercial, be careful what you ask for. It will be a nightmare for you, for noise, for traffic. You think that quick time or that quick trip is a problem? Wait till you get some markets backing up to you within the 20 feet or whatever it is to your backyard with maybe a single row of trees. That is not something that, trust me, you'll be back here asking why we allowed that development to go in if we did that. So I don't think commercial is a good mesh with this. That said, I think there's a happy medium. I think single-family homes are a more appropriate use for this property than condominiums. I live on an acre lot. I can appreciate the folks who live on large lots, and I try to put myself in your shoes to say, would I want a condominiums right next to me? I would not. I think there needs to be more of a transition for that. So that's why I'll be voting against this. Any further questions or comments before we take action? All right. Commissioner Hutchinson. Oh, sorry. My board has lit up with people wanting to speak now. So Commissioner Patterson, if you could just hold a second. He wish to speak. Oh, done. Commissioner Condi? That. Okay.
Make a comment?
Okay, Commissioner Hutchinson wants to make a comment, so we're going to go to you.
Yeah, I wanted to speak a little bit to this case as well. I've been living in Peoria for 25, 30 years, something like that, and I have a similarly orientated lot that was formerly up against a commercial zoned property. This is before I became involved with zoning and being on the commission. And they changed the zoning behind me. I wasn't paying attention. They changed it from commercial to single family houses. It was high density, and again they put these single family houses close together, 2-story, right against my back wall. I mean, they don't even have 20 feet of a backyard, and they just stacked them up right behind me. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I got involved in the city and in the planning side of it. After listening to all the arguments and all of the presentation information from both staff and the applicant, I do think that this is a very, very good fit. This is as good a fit as I think you guys are going to get in that location. I think that they did a very good job in buffering the space between the development and the backs of the houses. Having that very large open space there, I think is going to make a big difference. And I sure wish a development like this would have went behind me instead of the single family houses that ended up right against my back wall. So I am going to vote in favor of this tonight, and for that reason. It's from my own experience. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Hutchinson. Commissioner Grice.
As the property transitions from the larger single family up towards the commercial, there has to be something that makes a transition, whether it's up against the Quick Trip or it spreads across the 12 acres. So someplace has to be a transition to be able to go through those different uses. And the fact that they're putting an entire piece together, allowing for the green belt as large as they can make it to buffer the single family and moving the more intense use up towards the commercial, seems that this makes it a much better fit than trying to put single family across the entire piece, because then you still have the issue of the no transition up against the existing commercial. So for that reason, I think it's a very good use. I think it's probably as best as you can come up with. Infill is always very, very difficult. And I think it's a good use, and so that's why I'll be voting for it.
Thank you, Commissioner Grice. Commissioner Hutchinson, did you want to speak again?
And one other thing I wanted to address too, and I'm hoping, I'm sure the city's going to look into it, but I don't think this is a sham process at all. I believe I believe in our city, and I believe in the process that we have in place to do work like this and to create, desirable communities to live in. But I would not have any tolerance to hear that this is a sham process and some work is going on outside of a permit. And I would imagine the city's going to look into this. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yep, totally agree. All right, any further questions or comments before we take action? All right, seeing none. Again, for this item, we'll be taking action on the general plan amendment and the rezoning request separately. We'll take action first on general plan amendment GPA 18-08. Anybody care to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval to the City Council to redesignate the 12.79 acres from low-density residential to medium to high-density residential, and that is for case GPA 18-06, which is a minor general plan amendment.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Connie. We have a motion on the table. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to recommend approval of GPA 18-08 to the City Council, subject to the conditions and stipulations outlined in the staff report. Commissioners, please vote. And the item passes 4-5. Next, we're going to consider the rezoning case Z02-0. Oops, sorry. Why have I got a different number here? Oh, I have it as Z0203A.2. Why is that different than what I'm seeing on my screen?
Apologize, Mr. Commissioner, it's Z0203A.2.
Okay, thank you. All right, next we'll consider rezoning case Z02-03A.2. Any further discussion on this item? None. May I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval to the City Council to rezone approximately the same number of acres from planned area development PAD to planned area development PLAD, subject to conditions in Exhibit 1, that is case Z18-02 rezoning.
That's not correct, right?
That
We need to
can't
make
be
a
correct
correction
because
on
you're going
that.
from planned area development to planned area development.
Mr. Chair, just the case number. So again, it's case Z0203A.2.
Oh, it's the wrong case
We have an
number.
error on the screen.
Okay.
Apologize for that.
Case Z02-03-03A2. Okay.
Right.
That's the
Perfect.
correct
Thank you.
one.
We'll make sure we're
Okay.
correct for the record there.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to recommend approval of case Z02-03A.2 to the City Council, subject to the conditions of approval outlined in the staff report. Commissioners, please vote. And that passes 4-5. Thank you, Commissioners. I'm sorry, 4-1. Thank you for the correction. Passes 4-1. All right, that concludes that matter. The next agenda item is call to the public. Are there any comments from the public on non-agenda items? Seeing none, we're going to move on to our next agenda item, updates from staff. Does staff have anything to report?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, no additional report other than the meetings that we have on the screen. So our next meeting will be March 21st, 2019.
One other item to add, as you can see on the screen, our meetings in April show the first one is normally scheduled for April 4th. Please be aware that the City Council is holding budget study sessions at this time. So in lieu of being bumped out of this room, we are asking to potentially move the meeting to April 11th. You will be receiving an email shortly to see if you would be available for the new date, April 11th. That will be a special meeting. Please note, in exchange for April 4th being canceled, April 18th will also be canceled. So the only meeting potentially we would be having would be on April 11th.
Great, thank you. Any further updates? None? Okay. Next is Planning and Zoning Commission updates and report of current events. Do any commissioners have any updates or current events to report? No further business. I call this meeting adjourned.